I have a statement up here on the board, and by itself, it's a very interesting phrase. And I'm going to ask, what does it mean to you? What does it mean to you? And I'm sure that everybody in here will have a different meaning for this. And a lot of it depends upon where your relationship is with God and where your relationship is with all kinds of different things, what kind of problems you are or are not going through. But we all know that God can. Now, if I were to put another name in front of that, something like that, it'd make it very interesting. And this could also be an answer to a question. And, we would say, well, who could do that? Well, God can, right? That would just be like, who could make a double chocolate layer cake with vanilla cream icing? Eber can. Now, I don't know how many of us want to eat it, but yeah, we know Eber can. But we know Dee can, Marie can, lots of people can. So this can be an answer to a question. But I'd like to change this phrase just slightly. We have the next slide. Okay. I'm going to change it just very slightly. Yeah, just go down one. The next. There we go. Okay. Now, what I did was just simply put 3 dots after it. Now, does that change the meaning of this phrase? Now I have turned this into a very open-ended statement. I could put this up there and we could teach lots of different messages on it. God can something. God can something. And we each and every one of us could put a different ending on this. I'm sure that if I wanted to, preach some kind of a message that God can heal the brokenhearted, and then Brother Randy, he could say God can't, and he could preach a totally different message. But we have simply added a little tiny something to it and taken it and made it from a statement to a very open-ended question or a very open-ended statement. And it leaves a lot of room. And again, each and every one of us in here could answer this phrase or add to this phrase differently than someone else. Now let's change it again. Don't you love grammar? Now we've made it somewhat even more interesting. God can. That's a question. All right? Somebody has asked a question. And each and every one of us in here can have a different answer to this question. But there's also another way that we can look at this. Okay, last week Brother Nick talked about faith, and I can make this as asking a question. I say, well, who can fix your problem? God can. By answering a question as a question, we have now introduced doubt. You've introduced doubt. Because now you're questioning, God can? Right? We all know that God can, but we say, if God can, now we're not 100% sure that he can or won't do something. And it brings in doubt. And doubt is what ruins our faith. Last week, we talked about faith. And it's faith plus doing something that equals belief. We can actually believe in God by knowing that God can do, and he can do anything and everything. And without that doubt, that increases our faith. Now, we all know that God can do just about anything. But you know, there are things that God can't. Anybody believe that? God can't. And we're going to look at some of those. First thing is, God can't lie. Can't do it. Hebrews 6:18 says, there are by two immutable things in which. And that in itself is a very interesting phrase. It says two immutable. Word immutable means it's undisputed. You can't contradict it. That's just the way it is. There are two immutable things in which it was impossible for God to lie. That we might have a strong consolation, who being fled for refuge to lay hold unto the hope set before him. It is impossible for God to lie. Now, I don't want to see any show of hands in here, but how many of you ever said a little tiny white thing during the course of your lives? None of us have ever done that, okay? And we know that there are little things that run around that we have called children, and we ask them a question, did you eat that chocolate cake? No. And her face just as brown as can be and hands full of stuff, okay? And we've all done it. I've been there. I am no exception. We have all, during the course of our lives, said things that aren't 100% truthful. And, you know, we say, well, it's just a little lie, a little white lie. Well, a lie is a lie. And we ought not be doing it. We ought not be doing it. The second thing is, and before I break, yeah, it's good. We could say, God can't be given a problem he can't solve. Have you ever, in your work or anything like that, sit there and have a problem and try to figure it out. And you know, man can do a lot. I mean, there's a program on, they call it Impossible Engineering. And they build stuff that it's just unreal. But you know, and I didn't know it, I just heard it the other day. You know, there's no bridges across the Nile River. And you would think in this day and age they would have a bridge across the river, the biggest river in the world. There's no bridge across it. But, you know, God can't be given a problem that he cannot solve. I don't care how big it is, how small it is, how much it affects your life. God has the answer. God has the answer. And what we have to do when God has the answer, or when we run into a problem, we can say, well, who could fix this? God can. Go back to the beginning. God can. He cannot be given a problem that he can't solve. A third thing, and sometimes we feel this way, but you know, God can't leave you. How many of us remember I think there was a poem or something called Footprints in the Sand? Ever seen that? You got two sets of footprints going in the sand, guys going through a lot of problems in life, and then all of a sudden there's only one set. And then later on it comes back to the two. And he said, God, you left me. No, I didn't. I picked you up and carried you. And, you know, we do. I mean, as humans, we will get in situations that we feel like there's no hope, that everybody has left us, but God will never, ever leave you. Never leave you. And this is found in Genesis 28:15. He says, and behold, I am with thee always. And I will keep thee in all places, whither thou goest, and whither thou bringest thee again into this land. For I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. And what he's saying in this statement, he says, I'm going to be with you with every problem you've got until that problem is over. And problem is that sometimes, we get so wrapped up in our problems, and we want to solve them. Yeah, see, that's what gets in the way. We get in the way. Now remember, we already learned that God cannot be given a problem that he can't solve. And since he can't solve it, he is going to be with you there until the end, until it is solved. But we have to allow God to do that. And we must believe that God will do that. Fourth thing, God can't sleep. Now, everybody wake up. Okay, I mean, you've had your nighttime to do your sleeping. In this day and age, we've got a lot of online support things, this and that. You get a cell phone, you call somebody. You get a problem with the PC, you can call somebody. You get a problem with your car, you can call somebody. And they say, and we are available 24/7, right? We love stuff like that. What we don't like is every time we get that 24/7, you got to go through 1,500 finger presses to press 1 for this, press 2 for that, press 3 for this, press 4 for that. And by the time you get done pressing, you forgot what you was even calling about. All right? There's a story a while ago that there was this woman. She was kind of a little bit I'm not going to say really pushy, but she always wanted to get her way done, everything with the pastor and this and that. So she came up, cornered the pastor, and started spouting off all her problems to him. And then she looked him square in the face and said, what are you going to do about it? And he didn't get, riled up or nothing. He looked at her and says, well, ma'am, I'm going to go home and go to bed. Go home, go to bed. You don't care about my problems. He says, well, I look at it this way. Since God's going to be up all night, I'm going to let him worry about it. And that's the way we ought to be. Yes, we will have problems. And half the time, in fact, I'm going to say probably 90% of the time, there is nothing that you can do about it. A lot of times, our problems are a result of what somebody else did. And it affects us. And there's nothing that we can actually do about it. But yet we'll lay awake all night, toss and turn, and worry about it. Now, let me ask you a question. What has worry ever solved? Okay, everybody got the answer in your head? What has worry ever solved? Nothing. So, how's that song go? Don't worry, be happy. And we ought to be happy by the fact that God is going to be out there all night, 24/7, 365 days out of the year for the rest of our lives, available to be and help us with our problems. He's going to be there. Psalms 121:4 says, behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. God can't sleep. Now the next one is a very interesting one, because this is the way we want God to work. We want God to do whatever we want him to do when we want him to do it. Right? Does it work that way? No. How many's ever flown in an airplane? Right? Okay? Taking a bus. Anywhere. Okay? Taking a train. All right? When you either flew on the plane or took the bus or this and that, did you call up the bus company and say, I want to be picked up at 7:42 a.m. and I want to be put in this place on this time? Does that work that way? I mean, when we go on an airplane, what's the first thing we do? We sit down and we look at their schedule. We don't take and put our schedule into the airline system. But so many times when we want God to help us, we want to give God our schedule. And God doesn't work that way. Acts 1:7. And he said unto them, it is for you to know the times, and he said unto them, it is not for you to know the times or the seasons which the Father hath put in his own power. Mark 13:33, take ye heed, watch and pray, for ye know not when the time is. God will do stuff for us. And we know that God can. And God can and God will. But God can and will do it on his time. God knows when things are best for us. And so many times we blame God for our problems when he doesn't do it when we want him to do it. God cannot be put onto a time schedule. And then that leads us into the next one. Yes, God will do things on his time, but he won't be late. Now, I wish the airlines could say that. And the bus line. Bus lines are actually pretty good. We were up in Parkersburg here a couple of weeks ago, and they were right on time. But, you know, airlines are a totally different story. And then, but God can't be late. And we think, because sometimes when we have our problems and we think that they have gotten worse, and we think that things are a result of this, it's because God, if you would have been earlier, this and this and this, we don't know. But God can't be late. And then that's just like with Lazarus, okay, in John 11:21. Then said Martha unto Jesus, Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother would have not died. So what she is basically doing is blaming God for being late. Hey, if you would have been here, this wouldn't have happened. Hey, God, if you would have done this, then this wouldn't have happened. And we blame God for our own shortcomings. Then Jesus said unto her, thy brother shall rise again. He's an on-time God. How's the rest of the song go? Yes, he is. God has the answers to all of our questions, and God will answer those on time. But we have to let God to do it. And you know what gives us the perception of God being late? Our impatience. I mean, we are a very impatient society. We want everything now. I mean, I remember we used to have to, when we used to talk to each other, remember that, when we actually had conversations, and we'd pick up a telephone, but even prior to that, does anybody remember pencil and paper? Can we think back that long to pencil and paper? And we used to write stuff and send it in the mail, and then a week or so later, we would get an answer. I mean, yeah, we found out about Aunt Sarah and Uncle James, and they were doing okay, and it might have been 2 or 3 weeks after he had his bunion surgery and all this and all that, okay? So what do we do now? Oh, it's instant, right? We got to Facebook it. Oh, come on, this thing is slow. Oh, come on, all right, slow, all right? And then we'd send pictures and this and that, and all that wasn't quick enough, so they come up with what they call Instagram. You get it out there instantly because we have become impatient. Kids want, our family, kids, a lot of kids today, they want to be and have their big old mansions the day after they get out of high school and stuff like that, But, God can't be late. We just have to be patient. And sometimes, it's tough. There's problems that we've gone through. There was one that we went through, lasted what, almost 10 years, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, something like that. And it seems like a long time until you finally get there, and then you just wonder where time went. We need not to be so impatient. God can't be late. Now, I know nobody has ever done the next one. I mean, I know for a fact that nobody in here has ever lost anything. Now, let me tell you about most things, okay? You don't lose them. You just forget where you left them. I lost my cell phone. Well, 5 hours later, you find it out on the front porch because that's where you left it, and you forgot you left it there, okay? God can't lose anything. We all lose stuff. We all misplace stuff. We all forget where we put things. But God can't lose anything. John 6:39 says, "And this is the Father's which hath sent me, that all things which hath given me, I shall lose nothing, but should raise it up again at the last day." God's not going to lose a single thing. That also means that he's going to have a list. I don't know if God makes lists or not. I'm just going to say that he does. But God has this big list of all of our problems and everything like that. He's not going to lose that list. It's going to be there. And he'll get to it when your time comes, or his time comes, not yours. But God can't lose it. And then since he doesn't lose anything, it's always available for him to use. We spend a lot of times looking for stuff when we could actually be using it. But God is always going to have things available. Next one. And this is an interesting one. God can't be second in your life. Can't. Exodus 20:3 says, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me." Now, it's interesting that it says no other gods. What is a god? A god is anything that comes before God. It could be your job. It could be this. It could be a person. It could be anything that you put before God. I always say, and I've lived by this philosophy, and it's one everybody needs to live by. God first. Okay? Simple as that. God first. Family second. And then everything else falls in place. We have to have God first in our lives. Matthew 6:24, it says, "No man can serve two masters." You ever had a job where you had two bosses? Hey, I have. It's a lot of fun, isn't it? Huh? No. How come? Because a lot of times you got one wanting to do this and one wanting to do that, and they contradict, and then you don't know what to do. In fact, I actually got fired over that. Only time in my life I've ever been fired, because I had two bosses. And it says, "No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to one and despise the other." You cannot serve God and mammon. You cannot serve God and the world at the same time. You must have God first in your life. And I'm telling you, if you put God first, that holds the family together. And that makes the family want to stay together. Everybody know what a family is? All right? Seems half the world anymore doesn't. But God first, and then that keeps your family together. And then once you get those priorities straightened out, everything else in your life just falls into place because you've got your priorities in order. But we must have God first. He cannot be second in our lives. Next one. Do you wish this was true for people? God can't change. I want each one of you take a look at the way you are now and then say the way you were 10 years ago, the way you were 20 years ago. Do you look the same? Yeah, I remember, I think, pre-dirt when I used to have hair. I didn't have all the wrinkles. I actually had black hair. You know I used to have black hair? Black curly hair. So curly that when I went to the barber, he had to thin it out. Now I wished I had a little bit of that back. But we change. We change physically and we change mentally. And all too sad, we can even change spiritually over our lives. But God can't. Hebrews 13:8 says Jesus Christ the same, yesterday, today, and forever. Malachi 3:6, for I am the Lord, I change not. Now, the key thing about this, and since God can't change, then what he says and what he does will always be the same. You know, we can go out, we can buy insurance things, we can get services on our phones, and we can buy this and buy that. And we agree to the terms and conditions. Anybody ever read those little things, terms and conditions? Sure we do, right? I agree to the terms and conditions, and we check the box, we hit the button, and we have no clue what they are. But you know, a lot of times in those terms and conditions, it says terms and conditions can change over time. So you are agreeing to allowing them to change something. Sometimes it's for the good, sometimes it's not. But God's word never changes. We have the same Bible now that God had when God had the Bible written. What changes a lot is man's view of that. God cannot change. For I am the Lord, I change not. And the good thing about that, when God, says he'll do something and anything like that, then we know that he's going to be the same in the future. Wouldn't it be nice, Randy, if we could turn around and take our money and get, say, 15% on our investment and know that you're going to get that for the next 50 years? Wouldn't that be nice? I mean, that'd be all right. But we know that's not going to happen because here again, it's going to change. But God is never going to change. Now, the next one, I really think it's interesting. God can't break a promise. Every 4 years we get these promises, don't we? You know what I'm talking about. Every 4 years we get them, and we hear them, and we believe them, and we elect them, and we put them in office, and the next day, what happens? They keep their promise, right? That's just like there's one time there was this interview going on between this reporter and this politician, and she kept asking him questions, and he would hem and haw and give all kinds of weird answers and this and that. And then finally she looked at the guy and says, could you just answer one question with a straight answer? And he says, well, it depends. He says, well, I'll make it real, real simple for you. What's your favorite color? He looked, he says, oh, well, that's easy. Plaid. We have so many people make promises, and then when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, they don't keep them. And what do you think about people that do that? Here not too long ago, I needed a tree cut down. This guy was in the neighborhood. I asked him to do it. He said, yeah, I'll do this and I'll do that, and it costs you this much, and we shook hands. And then when it came time to do it, he only did half what he said he was going to do, but still charged me the full price. And I just looked at him, and, he's kind of the guy that you didn't know whether you wanted to, what I'm saying. So I went ahead and I paid it, and I just looked at him. I said, your handshake means a lot. Mm-hmm. Okay? But, with God, a handshake is a handshake. I remember when a handshake used to really mean something. Remember that, Mike? You'd go out to a farmer, and you'd say, okay, I'll cut down all these trees, and this is what we're going to do, and this sort of thing. And you would shake hands on it, right? You didn't write up 55 pages of fine print that nobody understood or never read. You made a promise, and you kept that promise. And we ought to do that as humans anyway. We as Christians, when you make a promise to do something, you should keep that promise no matter what, because you made it. But God can't break a promise. In Psalms 89:34, he says, my covenant will I not break, nor alter things that I have gone out of my lips. I will not break a promise that I have kept, I have made. And when somebody does that, when you, even like in business or just everyday life, and somebody makes a promise to you and keeps it all the time, how do you feel about that person? You trust them. And then that builds up your faith. We've all had contractors. We call them up, say, hey, I need this work done. Oh, I'll be there tomorrow. Well, we all know about tomorrow, right? Tomorrow never gets here. It's always tomorrow. They make promises they can't keep, so we lose trust, we lose faith in them. God will always keep his promise, and the more he keeps that and the more we rely on that, the more that builds up our faith. Because we know we have someone we can fully trust and count on. And for the last one, I love this one. God can't be defeated. We look down through history. I'm not a big history buff, but there are different phases of history that have been interesting. There's always been countries that rise, always been countries with great armies, always been this, always been that. But more often than not, every one of them at some point in time has been defeated. They've been defeated. Because no matter how big they thought they were, there was always somebody that was bigger and better. God can't be defeated. And also involved in this is, you have the devil. And, it's sad, but when it comes to fighting things, you cannot defeat the devil. You. Right? You. I'm not talking about God. I'm talking about us. We cannot defeat the devil. It's just like when you look at history. Who won the Civil War? Wrong war. The Revolutionary War. Who won the Revolutionary War? United States or Britain? United States didn't. The British gave up. See? Washington did not defeat the British. The British just gave up. And if we read the scripture, it says, resist the devil, and ye shall defeat him. Doesn't say that. Doesn't say resist the devil and ye shall defeat him. He says resist the devil and he shall flee from you. You can't beat them, but you can make them go bother somebody else. But God cannot be defeated. Yeah, God goes bother somebody else. I remember when I was in Houston, Brother Hughes down here preached a sermon by defeat the devil by keeping the monkey off your back. You know, we all get the monkey on the back of the devil on us. Okay, well, best thing you do is you just resist him and let somebody else worry about the monkey. God cannot be defeated. Matthew 16:18, and I say also unto thee, thou art Peter, and upon this rock. Now, when I read that, you ever get a picture in your mind as to what the writer is saying? Thou art Peter, and upon this rock. Now, what comes into your mind when it says this rock? Little tiny stone? Little tiny pebble? No, some big rock, all right? Now, I guess if you're from West Virginia, and that's a big rock out in the field somewhere. If you're in the mountains, it's a big outcrop somewhere on that. I'm from the coast, so it's just a great big old hunk of rock sticking up out of the ocean, all right? You can go up to Maine and New England, you can see that. Yeah, I'm going to build upon this rock. And I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. There's lighthouses up on the East Coast, and they're built out on rocks. And they have survived storms like you wouldn't believe. I mean, I'm from New Jersey. I'm from the coast. And, you know, everybody goes up there and sees the ocean during summer, right? And that's when we all go. We all go to Myrtle Beach or Virginia Beach or all these little beaches and see the little waves and all that. And, hey, that's great. But you ought to see it during a hurricane. Waves higher than this building. You're back 2 blocks from the ocean and the ground's shaking. But you know, there's lighthouses that have been up there for hundreds of years that have survived that. And why? Because they were built on a rock. And then you go to, I think it's Hatteras. They had to move the Hatteras lighthouse because it's built on sand. And then there was another lighthouse over in England somewhere. They had to move it because it was built on sand. And guess what? Sand moves. Sand shifts. Sand's not solid. We don't want a house. We don't want a church that's built on shifting sands. We want to serve a God that is on a rock. And likewise, our faith in God has to be like that rock. That no matter what the storms come or how calm the sea may be, we're going to serve that God. I know God can do anything. God can do everything. There are a few things that God can't do, but you know those are all good things. Those are all good things. Let's all stand. Have church in a few minutes. And Randy, could you dismiss us in prayer, please?